later.
You get to do all this stuff. Good afternoon. Welcome to the Monday, March 12th Public Works and Finance Committee meeting. We'll be working at 4 o'clock. The first item will be the approval of minutes, and then I'd like to rearrange the agenda so that Elisa can get to a meeting and take the fifth item and make it the second item. Did I do that correctly? Okay, so we just need to work on the minutes first. I read them and saw that they were fine.
I would move to approve the minutes as presented.
Yep.
Second.
Okay, great. So we'll go ahead and accept the minutes. And hey, Lisa, so you were item 5, but now item 2, FTA Master Agreement and FY 2018 certifications and assurances.
Correct. Okay, in your packet you had a very long master agreement, and I first wanted to share that that agreement was originally approved by City Council on February 21st, 2017. And FTA has not updated that agreement since then. However, they did ask us to reapprove the very last page of the agreement, which is called the, excuse me, I had my page marked. It is page 43.
And for us, of the PDFs, is it the first, second, or third?
It's the checklist document that actually has a list of all the certifications and assurances on it. It says page 43 at the bottom. I'm not sure what number that is in your guys'
Sorry, that number 2 goes to page 80. Hold on just a second. I couldn't remember which ones. It's going to be the third one, I think.
43 of the contract. Is that correct?
No, page 1 through 4, 2 through 3. So we have an 80-page document.
Should be packet page 65, I believe.
Okay.
Right, under procurement, section 16.
Dang it.
Yes.
Page 65?
Looks
Is
like.
it this?
No, that is not it.
Hey, Sarah, we rearranged because Elisa needs to get to a meeting. So you said page 45 or 65?
No, it's the second to the last page of the document. I apologize. I should have looked at the packet that you guys have.
Ours goes to 80.
Yeah.
No, there's
This last page.
122 pages.
It's not in there?
I'm sure mine is correct.
I didn't
'cause this
realize
is the
that.
wrong place.
Okay.
What's the title of the page? Or what's the
Do you guys have this last page in your packet?
FTA? Let's go see. Let's go see.
It would have been the very end,
Getting there.
second to the last page. The last page is where the mayor signs and the city attorney signs.
Okay, hold on. I'm getting there. I've learned now that I have to take the documents, open as a PDF, then open my PDF with I annotate, and then I can get to all
Okay.
Yeah, but I've just learned that today, so that's why I'm still scrolling.
As you guys are looking at that, I'll just kind of talk about why we're doing this. We receive federal funding at times from the federal government through either USDOT or FTA, or we are a subrecipient of funding through the Idaho Transportation Department.
So hold on just a second before
Okay.
you go. I don't have that page, but it just continues. It goes through procurement and all the things, special provisions, and then it ends at special provisions, but there's no
I also couldn't find it.
signing page, but there's a link on, hold on, there's a link, and I wondered if maybe there's a link under format for applicability. Is that got it?
Looks like the LSI contract is in there.
Oh, okay.
Just looking at the, you can see here the LTAC LSI contract is in there. It's
Oh.
also up here,
Oh,
so I'm not sure.
So
if
it's not the
that's
one.
Got substituted, perhaps?
yeah, I don't know.
Because it would otherwise be this master agreement.
I didn't look at the attachment online myself.
That ends at,
I attached this
CC,
document.
SR FDA Master Agreement and Fiscal Year 18 Certification and Assurances PDF. Is that the one?
Yes, it should be that one.
Why don't you tell us what's changed within
Okay.
that? Would?
The only thing that has changed is they combined procurement in with the required certification assurances. They just moved that section, which is an overall encompassing section of civil rights requirements. And then they took out, which is a section that doesn't apply to the city, is the Paul S. Sarbanes Transit and Parks Program, and that was not applicable to us anyhow. So every year, we go through the process of, as I said, the council had already approved the master agreement. However, FTA didn't update that. They updated only the checklist, and they removed number 3 and number 22. So out of the original master agreement that the council had previously approved on February 21st, 2017, they removed 2 sections, number 3 and number 22. All other items remain the same. They combined procurement in with the required certifications and assurances, which should be section 1 of the master agreement. And so basically what this document certifies us to is that we participate according to the requirements of the document when we have grants that are awarded to us with federal funds as a recipient or a subrecipient. And then at that point, we also include the documents that are needed within our bid specification documents or whatever is applicable to that. And so the requirements just follow through as we move forward our process.
So they were just trying to make sure that the things that didn't apply to us were taken out, but are not necessarily part of the agreement, but part of the checklist.
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yes. And normally they issue them together, but this year they didn't. And I was with ITD last week in a meeting. I asked, and they said they didn't know why that it hadn't been released at the same time. So the project that we have right now is it's called our 5339 Bus and Bus Facilities Project is still open, which we'll be completing this summer, which is the installation of the shelters and the covered bike parking. And I anticipate that we'll probably have to recertify again next year. We should have other awards that this would be applicable to also. The underpass project also. These requirements apply to that document also because that is federal funding that we're a subrecipient of.
Okay, so then all we need to do is just recommend approval of the FTA master agreement and to affirm and execute the FY 2018 certification and assurances.
Yes.
And just making sure, you'll clarify this. Do you need to clarify this, or can we put this on consent agenda?
My recommendation would be that it goes on consent agenda, but that again is up to you. As I said, the council had already approved the master agreement and they've only just taken 2 paragraphs out. Everything else remains the same. And in the past, the last page of the document is the affirmation that the city attorney and the mayor have reviewed the document and have the authority to sign it based upon council's approval.
Okay, yeah.
What I would suggest is if we're going to go to consent, that we include perhaps a memo from you that outlines what has changed between the old and the new, so it's very clear.
I can do that.
In the backup information as to what the difference may be.
Okay.
Oh, that'd be great, yeah.
If I understand correctly, the 2 paragraphs that are being omitted don't really apply in the first place. So
Correct.
if we could just get that out in the open, that'd be great. Thanks.
Sure.
Okay, and you said paragraphs 3 and 22.
3 was combined with number 1 and 22 was taken out, so it rearranged the numbering on the whole thing.
Oh, okay.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Do you have any questions? Okay. That's it?
So I will then draft a memo to include it
Thanks,
and
Liz,
then
for saying
double
that,
check
too.
to make sure that the attachments are accurate in the packet
Okay,
for
great.
council.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. And I did just have one item to share because I know it's going to come up. We received word on Friday that we were not selected for the Tiger grant application. It's posted online, so rather than a bunch of emails coming in, we were not awarded. I did do a briefing for Gary, because him and the mayor do have a meeting tomorrow with the DOT folks.
Yeah.
And I will have to say that a majority of the projects that were funded were highway projects or rail, and they went to state DOTs or tribal projects. I would say probably 85% of the funding. There were 4 multimodal projects, 2 that were funded to cities and 1 to a county and another one to a group of a collaborative regional project. And no one on the list that, and I haven't done a full search, but I would be relatively certain that none of the awardees had previously been awarded other than one that had a regional project. So, as you know, we had a Tiger II award in 2010, and so I did, I sent Gary an email for their meeting tomorrow asking for a possible debriefing and a few questions on whether or not they anticipate seeing Tiger again or if it will be rolled into the larger infrastructure package that that the president talked about in February. So.
What's the purpose of their meeting? Is it to talk about why we weren't selected? Or is it
Well, we didn't
And
know
now.
that we didn't know the awards were going to come out. We were hoping while they're at National League of Cities.
Oh, okay.
I had set up a meeting for them to, put a what do we want to say, a good word in for our
Put in a
project.
good word for
Yeah.
our projects, yes.
I mean, our goal would have been for them to get to meet the secretary, but that wasn't an option. We had tried to get that set up and we couldn't. So I was able to get them in to see the DOT staff, and we provided them with a bunch of information on the city of Moscow and the project and everything. And then as they were flying on Friday, the announcement came out of the projects that were awarded. So I sent Gary an email today saying these are the things that could be asked, and if you can receive a debriefing, I guess one of the questions would be, is there an underlying rule that you don't fund cities that have already been funded in the past, So,
We'll see what we find out.
yeah.
Do they provide any kind of feedback when they let you know that your grant has been awarded?
So last year, we had submitted for the 17, well, it was the 16 money. This money was really late in coming out. It was about 1.5 years delayed, but they did give us a debriefing on our project, and they said that we scored high and we made it to the secretary's desk. However, because of geographical funding allocation requirements, we weren't funded. So I would anticipate that would probably be the same feedback this time. I mean, we improved the application, if anything, and so I think it's just a matter of that we had previously been funded, and it looked like, as I said, the focus, they did have a target for rural communities, but the projects were mainly larger highway projects that were funded.
When you say highway, does it always mean 4-lane, or is it just two-way?
Somewhere, it was both. It was both. Some were interstate
Yeah.
or 2-lane highway projects that were funded. So it's really hard to compete with those types of projects. And when I look at the briefing, the summary page that they give for each one, there's, projects that have a greater need and have greater benefits than we did,
Right.
on ours. So if I was a reviewer, that's what I would be looking at. So.
Do you ever get the rubric ahead of time?
No. Well, in the NOFA, there's the Notice of Funding Availability. There's the funding criteria, but federal grants normally don't release a review rubric afterwards. They'll debrief, but they won't score you.
Oh, okay.
It's not released. So,
Good. All
right.
Well, thanks for the
Thank you.
update.
Yeah.
Glad you were able to slip in and get to your next meeting. Thank you. All right, and because you're arranged now, Sarah, we can have your item 2, but you're officially now item 3.
Great.
Disbursement report for February 2018.
Oh, hi.
Hi.
Okay, so I do have a quick question. With these forms that I'm sending around, am I going to be having you sign now? for Gary's?
Probably.
Just leave it.
Acting.
Yeah,
Acting.
probably for Gary.
Okay, maybe,
Or she
Okay.
can hold me, either way, that works.
sounds good. Just didn't know if I should even be sending those out. Okay, so for month ending February 28th, 2019, major expenditures came out to $2,020,744. Our major expenditures were about 93% of the total. Payroll came in at $1,004,757. And we didn't have a whole lot of other out of the normal payments. Probably our insurance payment was our largest. It was to the state insurance fund for workers' comp, and that was $169,138. We did make a couple of larger capital outlay payments. For SCADA construction, we had a $76,000 payment, and then for Booster Station Phase 1, we had a contract payment for $48,925. Other than that, all the other payments are either monthly payments or just standard.
Yeah, and I just had a question about terminology as
Sure.
I learned to that. So when you say that it's 90, okay, so when I was looking through the documents, it's like, if this is 93% of this year's budget, and then you look at where to actual it was last year, and then sometimes it's over and sometimes it's under. You're just record keeping along the way to see how we're doing. Is that what that means?
Well, when I'm talking about the overview, when I say the 93% here, that's actually just of that monthly amount. So major expenditures for that monthly expense that we have total came out to 93% of our overall expenses. So when we're saying that now in regards to these, when we talk about the next,
Yeah.
our annual reports, those are budget to actual and keeping track of where we're at.
Okay.
And so we have our quarterly updates that do that for you.
Right.
So at that time, you're going to be looking at 25%, 50%, 75, 100 to see kind of where we're falling to how we're budgeting.
Okay. Thank you for
Does that
answering
help?
that.
Yeah.
That's what I needed to know. Okay, so then I guess we'll just approve and sign the disbursements report.
Okay.
See nothing wrong with it.
Yep.
Okay. So I'll maybe just pass that and we'll leave that. Here's the big pen.
So when I want to talk to you about capital outlay,
Sure.
that's going to be in the quarterly?
Depends
this-
on which one you're talking about.
Yep, and that's, I think, my whole thing.
Sure. Is it this sheet you're looking at?
Mm-hmm.
Then yes, that's our fourth quarter budget actual.
Is this what we're getting ready to do next? Yeah. Thank you. Can we give this to?
I'll
Okay.
take
Lori.
that one, yeah.
Okay. Okay, so now we'll go to the fourth item, originally the third item, which is the fourth quarter financial report, July 1, 2017 to September 30, 2017 for FY 2017. Is that correct?
Yes, that's
Yeah,
correct,
okay.
for FY 2017. So in looking at the budget to actual, if you go all the way pretty much down at the bottom, it shows you where the city ended with revenues and expenses. We came in at about 64.61% of revenues, and expenses were 59.65. Some things I kind of want to point out that might look a little confusing throughout here is it does fluctuate on amounts, but anything that you see that's over 100%, those are mostly our transfers. And those are due to our year-end transfers because we can't budget that amount until we know at the end how much money we're going to have remaining. We have in our capital funds, it'll go, from water to water capital, sewer capital,
Yeah.
general fund to spending, just depends on where the disbursements need to go. So oftentimes you'll see those at 100%. We had some lower amounts within our capital, which is fairly common. I mean, this year we just the amount of capital projects and stuff that were projected didn't happen. So that's why those numbers are a little lower. Everything else is pretty much average, somewhere between 77 to 100%. Transit center, you'll notice, was very low at 39%, but that's because Gary and someone from the WSU, or from U of I, I'm drawing a blank on his name. Anyway, they were working on a contract for Transit Center, revamping it, and so that's now been finalized, and we should be receiving those payments in. But for 17, it was low because of working through the contract and making things flow that works for everyone.
Okay, good. Yeah, so there was, yeah, so you answered my question about capital outlay, and then, like, for sanitation,
Mm-hmm.
when it says investment in general, is that in this one? I'm not looking at the wrong one.
I don't see that one.
Okay, so I gotta look at the other document. I think that's the hardest thing for me is when trying to take it all in one.
Sure.
No, I'm back at disbursements, sorry.
That's okay.
That's okay.
Do you want to ask it?
Yeah, please.
Sure.
It was with sanitation. It's just trying to understand why the numbers end up in the column that they end up in, so for the future, I understand what it means.
Are you talking about in the receipts for February?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so going to, is it the investment income?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so this is when we receive our investment funds. This is how they're dispersed depending on the amount of whatever's invested comes in. So this one would be mostly, the investments are mostly writing in water because those are the business type funds are the ones that we have still mostly invested. The rest of ours are actually sitting in LGIP waiting to reinvest. So that's why you'll see that we don't have a whole lot besides general or business type funds because there's just not a whole lot. This down here with the Hamilton Parks and Rec, that's going to be the Hamilton Fund. So when you see those moving throughout as we reinvest, depending on the funds that we pull the money from, when the investment income comes back in, it's going to be spread out between however the percentage is that falls with the fund.
Okay. I know that's in a document that I read a while back.
You know, there's a lot of documents, so it's okay.
That is actually there. Okay, that's good. And then you answered the budget question I had. Okay. And do you have any questions or on the quarterly report?
I'm good with that. Looks pretty ordinary.
Yeah. Yep. Okay, with that then, I always think it's good to present the quarterly at the city council meeting. Do you have, yeah. Okay, so then onto regular agenda and the disbursements, the February one, just onto consent agenda?
So
Is that
doesn't
the usual
that,
process?
I probably should revert to Lori
Yeah.
on
These
that one.
normally just go to,
Even the quarterly one?
because you have your audit coming up.
Oh, and that's on Monday, the audit is being presented as well, so everything gets explained in that.
So then you're right. So then just to consent
No,
agenda.
I mean, you guys can do it.
Yeah, but it'd be kind of a duplication of
Yeah, I
information.
know.
right?
That's what I was thinking.
Okay.
Okay, so we already, both on to consent agenda. And since if the audit wasn't happening, I'd ask you to present the
Okay.
quarterly.
Sure. That works.
Is that okay with you?
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Okay.
All right.
Thanks, Sarah.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, so now the fifth item. The sixth and Mountain View stop sign warrant study.
Before we get started, can I request, is it point of privilege to use the restroom?
You can
So
just,
let's go.
let's just go.
Okay, I'll be right back.
Actually, I think you skipped one.
I was just looking.
The
The
local
initiatives?
strategic initiative
Yeah,
number 4.
yeah, sorry.
LTAC.
I was busy thinking about which number I was on. We're
Are
on
you-
5.
Are you taking over on that one because Elisa's gone?
That is correct. I am. So the Local Strategics Initiative Program, this is the project that's related to the slurry seal that we'll be doing this summer. And on the screen is the presentation that initially Elisa gave to you when the original application was being made. Updated it a bit based on today's status and what we're talking about today, which is the actual state-local agreement. So just to help remind folks briefly, this was a funding opportunity that came about as part of that surplus eliminator program in the state in 2017. That was deemed to be split between the state and local projects, so 60% to the state, 40% for locals. And then there were some caveats set upon that funding, and it must be related to maintenance or dealing with safety and mobility aspects on the existing roadway or bridge system. And one of the interesting little twists is that the project must be ready to go out to bid within 90 days of the date that the contracts are signed. So that's the contract that's before you today. In this particular project, It is ready to go, just needs to, once we get our contract, we send it to LTAC. They take a quick look at the project and specifications and drawings and tell us we're good, and then we put it out to bid. So this one's actually ready to go, pending the contract and their review. Within these, there's no local match requirement. They cut us a check and we go do the project. If there's money left over, then we would need to refund that. Not anticipating that to be the case here, but it depends on the bids. They did have a limit of $1 million per project and one per municipality. We applied for a project for the slurry seal to do about 265,000 square yards of slurry seal at a cost of about $477,000. We were awarded that contract. I think we were number 9 in the state overall for the amount requested, the $477,450. The project will do slurry seal like we've done in the past. These are the areas of town we've done slurry seals before. So you see they're kind of scattered all over the community. For this particular project, we really have 3 project areas. One does the area to the west, including some of that war bonnet and A Street extension, and then areas 2 in the northeast and 3 in the south. So area 1, war bonnet and A, but also portions of Farm and A Street, and a little bit of 6th Street, kind of on that west end of downtown. Area 2 is the, if you will, the southerly portion, and this drawing is turned so north is to the right, so I'll let that throw you. So it's the south end of town, south being here. The Sunnyside area, Sunnyside Addition area, south view around the Grove Apartments, and then some of the Indian Hills development south of Alturas Park. And then the third area, again, looking north to the right, portions of 6th Street, going on out to Mountain View itself, F&D, going to the east, and then Hayes and Polk Street and some of the others up here in kind of the northeast quadrant of the city. So a little bit everywhere. It's a lot of area to cover, so we're really pleased to get the financing for it, to be able to cover that much using grant funding rather than city pavement management program funds. So what's before you today is actually the agreement. It's a standard agreement between the local Highway Technical Assistance Council, LTAC, and the city of Moscow for that grant award under the LSI program.
You all got any questions?
Well,
Did
I
I
think
just
it's a great windfall.
Just this one?
And I
You
assume that
just missed the beginning.
the way that it's being allocated has to do with Tyler's assessment of which places are, where it's most cost effective to put that down currently, as opposed to just randomly.
Randomly around town. Yes, that is correct. I mean, a lot of it is based upon the condition ratings that we have on our street system inventory, and the type of application that fits certain condition streets. The slurry seals allow us to do certain range. This was the project essentially that was anticipated before the grant even came into being. And so they'd been doing preparation work last summer and getting ready for this year's slurry seal using city funds. And so with that and a little bit of expansion, we were able to do this application. And so, yeah, it's based on those streets that have the need, based on the overall condition, which ones are prepared in time for this application this summer.
And so since applying all the slurry is temperature related too, when can you start and when will you get to finish?
Generally, you want it to be pretty hot. So it's typically a July, August timeframe. A lot of it depends on the schedule of the contractor, because they're coming in from outside of town typically. But we'll see who actually gets the award.
Did you have a question?
Well, it just appears you had started talking when I walked in, but did I miss anything besides the intro slide?
Yeah, I think that was probably it. Just this was something that went through council with a contract previously, and now we're actually, or an application, excuse me, for the grant. And this is the contract based on the award amount.
And it was part of this eliminator program and the notes. And
Yep.
do they always have that? Does the state always have that? And that's
This
just
was-
a-
Have a
this is
surplus
the-
first.
I
The one and
know.
only
I
so
was gonna
far.
say, I've not ever remembered that language even, okay, so, great. So, the proposal is to forward this to council with a recommendation to accept the local strategic initiatives grant and execute the LHTAC local agreement for $477,450 for the 2018 pavement preservation program. Are you both okay with that? To move it
Yeah.
on to council? Yeah, presentation? Yeah,
Recommend
regular.
acceptance.
Definitely, in regular agenda.
Do regular versus consent?
The reason is because I can tell you, just right now, as an elected official, I feel like I talk about the streets a lot. And so having more information out there about the decisions that are made and the assessments that you all make and putting together how you decide which streets are paved and stuff is very helpful. I know that you do it a lot, but I really appreciate it.
Yeah, not a problem. Quick switch.
Switch seats, now you're going to the next item, so that means we're on 6, which,
Sixth and Mountain View
I mean,
stop sign.
yeah, 6th and Mountain View stop sign warrant study. Thanks for all the information that you sent in this packet on that, too.
Certainly welcome.
Mhm.
So at the last committee meeting, we actually talked about the engineering traffic study for a proposed four-way stop-controlled intersection at Mountain View and 6th. So just to help folks remember a little bit what we're talking about, we're looking at that location of Mountain View. Currently, it's a two-way stop control with the stop signs on 6th Street, and Mountain View has the right-of-way. There was discussion, has been discussion for a while amongst different parties about, the possible need to convert that to a four-way stop. So the Engineering Division of Public Works followed our adopted stop sign policy and their assessment of the intersection. And there are a number of principles within that we touched on the last meeting, everything from following the manual of uniform traffic control devices that address traffic volumes for vehicles, pedestrians, and bikes, traffic speeds, sightline issues, general accident records, those kind of things that could spur a review and possibly result in implementation of traffic control devices, but that the overlying principle, if you will, is that the accidents will be used as that primary warrant when you're assessing whether or not to put in stop signs. So just some of the key points within the policy itself. In the warrant analysis, and we went through these in detail last time, but essentially the overall criteria is you have to meet 2 or more of the warrants, and there's a series of them that we go through, or there needs to be justification by the city engineer based upon the guidance in the MUTCD manual. In this case, we had gone through all of the warrants. Just as a reminder slide here, all 3 of the warrants, and some of these are multi-parts, they all failed to meet the criteria for installation of the signs. There were some other considerations that are also spelled out in the MUTCD. Those were also not met. So at that point, staff recommendation was that we not change the traffic control. So that's where we left it at that stage. But there were some questions that you had in the conversation, so I'm going to try to answer those now. One of them was the requirement as far as criteria that talks about the 8 busiest hours of the day or something along that line. There's which
hours
8
were
hours
used in
have
the study?
have the highest volume of use. And there was a question about, okay, what was the time of day that we assessed within this particular study? And it turns out it was from 11 a.m. to 6 p.m. So it picks up that lunch rush, the after-school departure, and then the evening commute home as the busiest 8-hour section that we looked at. Going back and looking at more detail in the MUTCD and the way that particular language is written, because if you recall, I said it's a little vague, and it is still vague when I went back and looked at it again. There are a couple of schools of thought. Some of them say it's an 8-hour chunk of time consecutive. Others interpret it as the 8 busiest hours of the day. You can kind of cherry pick among the 8 hours. So we took a look at the cherry picking alternative as well. Still didn't meet that warrant in either case. Okay. Next question you had was whether or not there were bicycle and pedestrian counts available at that intersection, and we do not have those. It's not something we routinely count. There are some areas and times that we'll do that type of counting. For instance, the 3rd Street corridor, after council direction on Plan C, we'll be doing counts this spring associated with that type of thing, but we did not have anything on file at this time. There was a question about if we could put in turn lanes out there, particularly on the eastbound 6th Street leg. And here's a picture from Google that shows what's there, which is essentially a turn lane. And it's a turn through lane in the middle and a right turn lane. They're very short. You can see that the road is kind of wide here and it tapers down fairly quickly. So there's a little bit of challenge about how much two-lane queuing you could do there, but it is set up that way already today.
That's,
Rolling Hills across the street.
yeah, this is 6th
Yeah,
Rolling Hills
6th
on that
here,
side.
Mountain View here, Rolling Hills
Is
here.
there room to put a right turn lane on 6th so you
Sure.
could turn and go north?
No.
without-
That's a
there's not enough room.
28-foot wide street section, so there really is not room to do 3 lanes in there.
Do you think that might be helpful in the morning, especially when people are coming down, that some of them could turn and cross, only have to deal with 1 lane of traffic at a time if they went down 3rd Street when that's complete?
Yeah, this time next year, potentially that would be an option for them. But yeah, unfortunately with the 28-foot section, there's not width there to put that 3rd lane in.
Okay.
Okay. And then the question about accident history, which is the 10-year history is actually in your packet. You've had a chance to look at that, but one of the, I think the question that was being raised at the time was within the warrant analysis, it's the last 12 months, are there 5 accidents? And there were not. And so the question was asked about, well, was this an anomaly, if you will? Maybe it was a light year. So went back, excuse me, to pull the 10-year accident history. You've got the summary in there, but just to help folks understand a little bit, there were a total of 17 accidents over that 10-year period. Part of what you look at when you look at changing traffic control is whether or not the control device will affect the accident. Right? Is there the potential to somehow modify the conditions so that the accident may not have happened if you've installed a sign? So when you look at those 17 accidents, I believe 10 of them have the possibility they could have been affected by having a 4-way stop. 7 of those would not. The 7 included things like people just running a stop sign, or rear-ending the car that's stopped at the stop sign, or the one that drifts over and hits a parked car. The 4-way stop's not going to change any of that. Now, the other 10, almost all of them, well, they all fell into 2 categories. The majority of them were east or west traveling vehicles that pulled out in front of a north and southbound vehicle. So if the north and southbound vehicle had a stop sign, then in theory, that accident would be avoided. The others, and I think there were just 2, were when a northbound vehicle was turning left to go west on 6th, and they turned in front of a southbound vehicle. So again, stop signs, north and south, in theory, would prevent that type of an interaction, because you'd both come to stop and somebody would turn, or they'd be going at slow speed and stop before they ran into each other. So of the 17 over that 10-year period, I believe 10 of them have the potential that they could have been somehow modified or affected by a 4-way stop control.
So 1 per year on
An
average.
average of 1 per year, right? So again, the warrant is 5 or more accidents within the 12-month period, and typically you look 1 year back from when you're doing the study, and when we did that, it was not met because there was only 1. But looking over that 10-year period, there was 1 year, and it happened to be a calendar year, where we had a total of 3 accidents that would fall under that category of, potentially being improved. So again, that wouldn't meet the 5 accidents in a 1-year period warrant. There was one other instance where we had 5 accidents in a 12-month period, but 4 of them were the type of people running into a signpost or running through a stop sign or hitting a parked car. So they wouldn't have been affected by an additional stop sign in that case. So the highest year, if you will, was 2012, when we had 3 that would fit within that possibility of being affected. There were some years we had none. I think, in fact, there was a 2-year stint in about 13, 14, if I remember right, just none at all. So it varies, but never so great as to even meet the 5 in 1 year, 1 12-month period. So from that, I guess any other questions you might have, didn't see that staff would have any adjustments in our recommendation to just leave it as is for this time. Again, recognizing that there will be a roundabout there installed with the Mountain View project when that comes through.
My question, I wanted to remember, you put the questionnaire together in 2007. That's also in the packet that shows if somebody wants to have. Last meeting when you told us about the questionnaire, I was trying to remember the history piece. The
As far
stop
as the
sign
policy?
request form and policy, yeah. Was that 2007 when you did that?
I did not keep that in here, but the exact date of that policy adoption, I don't remember if that was 7
No,
or,
I was
it
wondering
seems like it was a
on
little bit later than that.
Okay.
But it's been quite a while.
Yeah, it just wasn't on the document, and so that's what I was just kind of hunting. Because the reason is it's a good document, ask a lot of good questions, and when people are thinking about stop signs, I want to recommend them. Oh, March 2011. Yeah.
It's 11 already.
2011, okay, yeah. And then the other question I had, when I was looking through all the information, and I'm trying to make sure this is correct, is it about that 5,000 to 6,000 cars a day travel on Mountain View? Because
That's
I'm going to tell you
probably
that.
about right.
Okay, so the document.
Depending on which portion of Mountain View you're on.
And I gotta figure out where it was. I love having this thing, and then at the same time, it's keeping up where you put it in the thing. I pulled up a document that showed different colors of traffic volumes. I did a search on the website. I did traffic volumes on Mountain View, and a great document came up, and it showed these different years, and it had little boxes, and it said and it had like 10 years, and it had different colors, and it showed all the different information. Sorry, Zach, of how many cars were traveling, and I just kind of. That's what I put together was 5,000 to 6,000, and I was just wanting to check with you if that's right. Because if that's the case, the amount of accidents to the numbers of cars passing on that section of road means we're doing okay, you know, in terms
Accident
of.
to travel, to number of trips is
Yeah.
pretty small ratio.
Yeah.
Yes, on our engineering website, we do have
You multiply that times 300 days.
Yeah,
We do have our traffic counts map.
Yeah.
That's within the engineering section of the Public Works website.
okay,
And looking at that and keeping in mind that the numbers that are there are at different years. It's just based on whatever the latest set of counts were for that particular location. But starting at State 8 and working your way north, there's 4,000 vehicles a day. That's a typical average day. Goes up to 5,200, actually 8,400 north of Joseph, about 6,500 north of 6th, 5,300 up to D, and then it starts dropping off 4,000, 2,500 north of F, and on down. So yeah, it ranges as much as 8,000
Yeah.
in the center section where it's busiest between Joseph and 6th.
okay, that's good, so thanks for that you knew that. I just knew how to get there, because that was really helpful for me, because when people are talking about counts, and there was so much data on there, that I thought that was a really good document. I just wanted to bring up for people to notice. And then I thought also what was interesting is it even had the ages of the people and the incidences, and so
the
I did a
accident
little
report.
tally, right? And of course, the 20-somethings are the largest group that are in the. I mean, the ages varied, and there was a 50 to 80-year-old group too, but the largest group that to participate in accidents was in the 20s.
And often they were the inattentive driver, failed
Inattentive
to
driver,
yield.
yeah.
The ones that were cited tended to be the younger drivers, not always. But
Right.
I think that perhaps the majority of those.
Yeah. So anyway, it was a good page of data, so I really appreciate you getting that one together. Very helpful. Do you have any questions or any information on that? No? So since we know we're not going to require a stop sign yet, or have a need for, do you feel like this should go to council again,
I'd like it to go to council.
all the way? Okay.
Yeah, I think it needs to go to council.
Yeah, no, but
So
under
we-
what do you want to say?
That we've decided at this point not to alter for the following reasons. We've decided because A, it doesn't meet the warrants.
Yeah.
B, we're putting in an additional east-west connector within the next year, and third, there's a roundabout scheduled for that within the next 5 years. And so perhaps we shouldn't monkey with that right now
Yeah, just-
because it doesn't meet the warrants.
Yeah. Is there anything else you wanted to have discussed?
I think we should talk about it and not put it on consent, if that's what you're.
Oh, no, I was just asking about like direction, and did you feel like, even though it's stated that we don't need the warrants, do you feel like warrants are needed after looking through the information and wanted to have more of a conversation in terms of recommendation? My recommendation is, yep, stay with, receiving the report and don't put a stop sign in. It sounds like that's where you are
Yeah,
too.
yeah.
I just wanted to find out where you were on it.
I would like a little bit more information, in particular about what motivations went into stop signs at D in Mountain View. Because it's my understanding that also did not meet warrants, correct?
That is correct. That did not meet warrants, and it was a council decision, which is the prerogative of council, to have that installed. We've gone back, and there was a request made to see if there was some additional information there before and after. We pulled the information on the before, and there's a pretty good report on that. But we did not have anything at the after, because we haven't had a reason to go back and count it, if you will, since that time. I think the primary driver at the time was the school. The fact that their elementary school, McDonald Elementary, is located to the east. There's a certain period of each day when there were a fair number of pedestrians crossing the intersection, and then the buses coming out, generally in mass in the evening, and not being able to get out because that was also a little busier time on Mountain View. And so, as I recall, those were kind of the two main factors that prompted the council to direct that to be installed.
Are there other examples of something like that happening in the last few years outside of that intersection?
As far as council direction?
Yeah, as opposed to warrants met.
The only other one I'm aware of is First Street. There were 2 stop signs installed, one I believe at Monroe and the other at Adams. And that was as a result of a request from a couple that happened to live up there near East City Park. That was when Linda Paul was on the council, so that was some years ago. That was the only other one I think I've seen in my time here, 15 years.
F Street, does that meet the warrant? Did it meet warrant?
F Street met the warrant conditions. Yes, we got there.
That was it for me.
Oh, okay. No, so that's good. I think we're good. So then get into a report at council, and then our recommendation to continue with what staff has said, which is their warrants aren't met, and I like the way you put it together, so thanks for that.
Okay.
All right. Anything else we can talk about? All right, with that, we can move to adjourn.
So moved.
All right, thank you very much. Thank you.